Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pigskin Pick'em 2018 Week 2 rundown. Now, we did the first show. I flew solo, so I thought, well, I'll give it a shot, see how it went. And shortly thereafter, the punchy pugilist, the man, the myth, the MVP of the Radulich and Broadcasting Network got in touch with me. His name is Pat Mullen, also going as Totally 80s Pat on the Totally 80s Pat, right? Am I right?
You are right.
All right. Pat Mullen has decided to join me this evening, and we're going to run down a few things here that happened in our Week 2 Pigskin Pick'em. So, Pat Mullen, first off, thanks for joining me this evening. How you doing?
Oh, my pleasure, Jess. I'm doing just great.
So we've got some stories we're going to quickly cover, just kind of throw out some of the big news that happened this week in the NFL. And man, oh man, I know I didn't officially put this on the agenda, but you know I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I never wanted a kicker to be fired so fast in my entire life than after we got done experiencing those missed opportunities on the field against the New Orleans Saints this past week. Not only that, but the kicker woes continued throughout the NFL.
I'm a Raider fan, Jess. You don't got to tell me about kicker woes from something.
Listen, Mr. Janikowski,
I wish we still had Mr. Janikowski.
You guys, I can remember Janikowski booming field goals from 60 yards.
He hit a 56-yarder on Monday night.
That's unreal.
And we have Mike Nugent, who can't hit an extra point.
Gonzalez failed the Browns, left 8 points off the board, which was a huge factor in this game. And then also the Minnesota-Green Bay game, which we'll talk a little bit about here as well as we kind of go.
It cost Mr. Carlson his job.
Yeah, dude. I'd call that a rivalry between Green Bay and Minnesota. That's
just a little
bit. And, to put that W on the board for the Vikings. And then we end up with a tie, 29-29. The second tie. Did you see that stat where they said it was the second tie, and it hasn't happened in the league since 1973? Yeah, so I think back-to-back is what they're talking about, I believe.
It's one of those things, though, where we're gonna unfortunately see a lot more of these ties happening. They really trumped this one up. So if the first possession results in a touchdown or a safety, the scoring team wins, and that's the only way it's an immediate win or loss. If the overtime ends in a tie, that's it. They're not going to double OT. They're not going to sudden death. That's it.
Well, that being aside here, let's talk real quick about the Steelers and their problems on and off the field, I guess you would say. They face Kansas City at home this past weekend, and it's like they were just trying their best to catch up, but they couldn't.
Kansas City, we knew going into the season that their offense was going to be what was going to carry this team. They weren't built defensively. They have a lot of new faces in the secondary, but it's pretty consistent what they're doing on offense with the exception of Pat Mahomes, who's coming in as their quarterback now instead of Alex Smith. And what Mahomes brings is what you saw him do this week. He is a big-time arm, and he is going to air that ball out. And he did. We've seen Kareem Hunt play less of a factor in their offense since then, but he's still a very dangerous option should they choose to use him. So you knew that going into this game, there was a high potential for a shootout. Mm-hmm. Pittsburgh's defense is older, they're slower, their offense is missing arguably its most important piece in Le'Veon Bell. Yeah. Now, Josh Connor's done his best to fill in and done all right, but you can't not miss a game changer like that. When they had to step up, Kansas City's offense did it, and they did it a lot of times by doubling and pressing Antonio Brown and taking him out of the equation.
They said that Mahomes set a record with 6 TDs in that game, and that is a statement. That is something that a quarterback for that team, I think it wasn't last year, it was the year before, where everybody was talking about how the Kansas City Chiefs couldn't find the end zone. They were not even able to hit a receiver in the end zone at all. And now to come out, Pat Mahomes is just nailing receivers left and right, threading it where it needs to go, and scoring TD after TD. Amazing stuff. But not only that, breaking news today, Pat Mullen. What did you hear about this controversy that is surrounding Antonio Brown right now?
So where this started, from what I heard, was basically a Twitter feed where some writer made a comment about how the only reason Antonio Brown is putting up numbers is because of Ben Roethlisberger. And I think everybody knows that that's pretty nonsensical. Ben's a great quarterback. Brown is an incredible receiver. But the way Antonio Brown responded was basically, let them trade me and see what numbers I put up. Whenever you hear a guy mention the word trade and that kind of attitude, it's not usually a good sign about A, where he stands with that team, or B, his future with them.
Yeah.
And now we're following that up with, he didn't come to work today.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, right before I hopped on here, I just checked to see if there was any updates. According to one report, which I think was on Yahoo, they were saying that he had a personal issue that had popped up. But again, you think that the organization would have known ahead of time and got ahead of this whole cluster before it really started to snowball and get out of control. Because all day I was sitting there just waiting for the next update. What's going to happen now? Is he back on Twitter? Now, I haven't heard much else since then, but man, could you imagine the state the Steelers would be in? Le'Veon Bell's not budging, and if Antonio Brown is going to give them troubles, it's just going to sink into the heads of that team, and it's not going to be good. Plus, next week, they're going to Tampa.
Yeah, it's the Monday night game next week.
Going to Tampa Bay. And
Fitzmagic.
Fitzmagic. And is he the backup to Jameis Winston? If I remember correctly.
He was, but I don't think he's going to remain that. I would be really shocked if he does not keep this job, unless he has just a terrible outing against Pittsburgh.
Let's hit our next story here.
So this is a big one, and you, of course, being a Browns fan, would have heard this immediately. Josh Gordon is no longer a Cleveland Brown. He has been traded to the New England Patriots, or waived and picked up by the Patriots on the condition of a 5th-round draft pick from the Cleveland Browns. Now, this is pretty big.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Let me give you a background and my feelings on Josh Gordon. I couldn't help but pull for the guy. I mean, we as fans wanted this guy to succeed, and a lot of times we believed that Josh Gordon was going to be a top receiver for our team, but it just seemed like every single season there was something coming up that kept this guy off of the field. And it usually wasn't injuries, ladies and gentlemen. It was something to do with his violating some type of drug policy, or he's got to get his head right. Okay, he's getting his head right. Come on back onto the field. Nope, don't have my head right yet. And then recently what had happened is, I remember last week when we faced the Steelers, he wasn't supposed to play. Something happened where he wasn't supposed to play at all. So when I heard that I think they had ruled him out for the Saints game. Now, this was before I heard anything about them releasing him. They ruled him out, so I was like, oh, okay, he must be injured, or maybe they're, kind of going back and correcting the mistake they made in week 1 by making him sit. And then they said, oh, no, wait a second, his hamstrings hurt. Okay, well, then shortly thereafter, they're like, oh, yeah, we're notifying Josh Gordon that we're releasing him on Monday.
That was after a report of him showing up at practice, quote-unquote, not like himself.
I know that if you're a fixture in that organization and you see Josh Gordon come in there day in and day out, after 6 years, you're going to know what this guy, his demeanor is. Okay, yeah, he's high off his ass, or no, he definitely looks like he's got his head in the game. So as soon as they saw, if they thought probably not acting like himself is their way of putting it gently, that'd be my guess. But either way, then we get the big news that he is being traded to the New England Patriots. What are your thoughts on that?
This is only going to go one of two ways. It's either going to be where he leads the league in receiving and becomes the guy in New England, or he washes out, because quite frankly, if you can't get straight under the eye of Bill Belichick, there's probably not a lot that can be done for you within the league anymore, and it's time for you to exit and figure something else out that you can do. And unfortunately, your Browns have drafted very high on talent but low on discipline.
Yep.
And Josh is kind of the big trendsetter in that regard. He was the first guy who really was the big part of when that trend started happening for the team. It's never been about a lack of talent. It's always been about a lack of discipline.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, we're seeing this happen in a lot of ways across the board on the NFL. And we have teams responding to it in certain ways, like Oakland, where if you're a discipline problem, you're not going to last, and Gruden's going to kick you out of the locker room. Mm-hmm. You're seeing Cleveland give a guy every opportunity to clean himself up before finally it just gets to the point where we can't do anything with you. We're washing our hands of you. But if Gordon is able to pick up the playbook and maybe not, I don't expect him to play this week, but if he puts time in, picks up the playbook, but most importantly, stays under control, then New England has gotten themselves a legitimate top playmaker in an offense that didn't really have one as good as they are. And they just put everybody on notice in the AFC and the NFL potentially. The thing with Gordon, too, though, is for a substance abuse problem, these aren't the Cowboys of the 90s. This isn't Lawrence Taylor. He just can't stop smoking weed.
There's an issue if you can't just put that down and proceed with a $1 million, $100,000, whatever, career in a sport that you should love playing. That was my biggest problem with this guy.
Agreed.
They're paying him too much money to be doing stupid stuff like that.
And again, it's a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison, but, I'm a New York Mets fan. Yes, I know. And I just had to watch a press conference that brought me to tears when David Wright announced that he was going to be forced to retire due to his degenerating spine condition, because this is a guy who not only legitimately loved being a Met for some reason, had offers to go elsewhere, stayed with the Mets, but legitimately more than anything loved playing baseball and wanted to do nothing else but just play baseball for the rest of his life. And he had that taken away from him. Josh Gordon is not only good enough to be the best receiver in football from a straight talent standpoint, he can potentially be one of the 10 best receivers on his talent alone. But he doesn't love himself enough, and he doesn't love football enough to do the right thing and get himself straight. Now, under Bill Belichick and the Crafts, we'll see if he can, because I guarantee you, if he slips up, they're going to wash their hands of him, and we're going to see him playing in the Grey Cup game.
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, let's move on here. Now, this one, I know it is close to your heart, and you wanted to bring this up here. John Gruden, who, now, you're not the only Raiders fan. Of course, you may have seen we have a Raider Nation in our Pigskin Pick'em. We got a Raider Nation. My good friend Justin Weinstock, who he's played on the Pigskin Pick'em with us for he's one of the first, I would say, back in the 2000s when we started this thing. But anyway, he's been a Raiders fan since I can remember. I knew this guy through the Gruden years and after. Well, now Gruden's come back. Give us your thoughts, Pat Mullen.
So we're talking discipline problems across the board and locker room disruptions. Gruden's one of those coaches who has said he would take a far less talented team if it meant getting distractions and disruptions out of the locker room. And we've seen that happen, most notably Khalil Mack. Now, there's a lot of fans on the side of Khalil Mack. There's a lot of people taking up the side for the Raiders. I'll say this, and I'll leave the Khalil Mack situation and go on to the whole. Khalil Mack was the fourth highest paid defensive player in the league with an existing contract. What he wanted was his contract renegotiated to make him the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. The thing is, he never met with John Gruden. They didn't speak. He had that demand before anything else and was going to hold out till he got it. I tend to agree with John Gruden, where if that's your attitude, it doesn't really seem like you want to be there. And on top of that, if you're supposed to be an impact player, but you go, 4-12 last year, 6-10 last year, and you didn't even get a 500 record, doesn't really reflect on you being all that great. So he made a deal to get rid of Khalil for 2 first-round picks, a second-round pick, and an additional 5th-round pick, I believe. Khalil Mack's tearing it up in Chicago like you knew he would, because he is arguably the best defensive player in the game.
I was going to say, I saw a stat line today that compared just his stats alone versus the Raiders defense as a whole. And wow, I'm sitting there questioning, like, what did you do, man? I mean, why did we do this?
But like I said, we're seeing, you look at it across the board now, there are a lot of teams that are having these locker room disruptions from people of a very important standing in the team. You don't want that to be something that's there, because that spreads really fast. It breaks a team apart and destroys what you're trying to put together. the Raiders are very obviously in a rebuilding stage right now.
Yes.
You're not going to help or foster that with bad feelings, bad attitude, holdouts, and people demanding more money even when the team's not doing anything. I love Khalil Mack, and I appreciate everything he did as a Raider, and I will always be a fan of what the guy can do on the field, but it was the right move to get him out and get a good return on it. Now, what you're seeing under Gruden is week 1, they didn't execute. And part of the problem is, if you look at Gruden historically, he never plays his starters more than a couple snaps during the preseason. So you're trying to get your guys worked out and in the flow and create an offensive rhythm, and you can't do that when they haven't played together all season in live situations. He also, in week 1, played a team that's favored by a lot of people to go to the Super Bowl in the Rams. They were competitive in that game until the fourth quarter, when a bad miscommunication on a throwaway resulted in a pick, and that was it. Week 2, he really could not have coached a better game. He had the correct defensive schemes in place. You had a quarterback in Derek Carr who had a near-perfect game.
Yeah.
He went 29 of 32 for almost 300 yards. He averaged 9 yards per pass. No turnovers, no fumbles. And they lost by a point because Mike Nugent, the replacement for Sebastian Janikowski, missed an extra point on a touchdown thrown to Seth Roberts. The defense is the problem as a whole because you have an old defense without playmakers. Bruce Irvin is probably the closest thing you have to a playmaker on that defense, and he can't do it by himself. Gruden's specialty has always been defensively strong teams that he is able to pick and choose from and put a competent offense together behind it. Even though Gruden's Raider years had him known as an offensive-minded coach, it's really been strong defenses that Gruden's always worked behind. He's going to have to adjust and make his offense the focal point right now while he builds a defense. And I think that last game was what you saw. Amari Cooper was featured heavily, which is something Gruden talked about doing all year, and he didn't have his drop-itis like he had last year. He converted 9 out of, I think, 12 targets for over 100 yards. The other parts of the offense worked as they needed to. Derek Carr was protected in the pocket. Marshawn Lynch was facing a tough run defense and couldn't get a lot going on the ground, but got enough. And the receivers did their part for the most part. It's the defense that couldn't hold anything and couldn't make plays. They don't make egregious errors, but when you have a defense that allows 6 to 7 yards on every play before a stop, you're not going to win. And so the people who immediately thought Super Bowl when John Gruden come in, I think we're being unrealistic. And the people who are saying that Gruden's a failure and looks out of his time because he's 0-2, I don't think are being realistic either.
Gruden has always seemed like a guy that he just felt like an NFL coach to me. Somebody that was kind of hard-nosed and knew how to play the game. And I liked watching him coach, if anything. Listen.
But there is something we're missing on Monday nights, though, now. You know, you look at this play and you see it develop. It's a Z-Spider Y2. He's going to isolate the single coverage up on the right-hand side of your screen. He sees the man-on-man, and he's going to take advantage of it. He lets that ball rip right out a 2-second release point, finds his man in the open lane. That's going to move the sticks 10 yards. I love what I'm seeing out of the quarterback position.
John Gruden, everybody. Beautiful, beautiful. So, you know, me and you will have to come back and get together either before week 4 or after week 4, because my friend, our teams are going to go head to head, and it looks like Cleveland Browns are going to be coming over to visit. We're going to be visiting each other. I can't wait till week 4, so that'll be a lot of fun. All right, let's get into what people have called for, and that's to talk about the Pick'em results for week 2.
Week 2 results.
Ronnie, SBP Ronnie. Now, this happened at least 2 years in a row. Ronnie says, I'm going to play, plays the first week, and then disappears off the face of the earth. So yep. I don't know if Ronnie Adams is going to be visiting us the rest of this season. If he does, great. If not, he didn't do it for week 2, and he set himself a big hole. Now, we also have Big Ben 07, who I said last week may have had a misunderstanding as to what we're doing here, but he's making picks. He's just not picking weights. If he wants to do that, I guess I'll just say, all right, that's fine, because, you know, he's at least contributing, we'll say. Now, coming up from the bottom here, I'm grouping these. Let's just say there's 5 points between the last 4 spots. We have Freebird with 50, Raider Nation 77. My good boy, my buddy Justin there with 52 points. Thug and Harmony with 54. Sawin, he had 55. There's 4 spots separated by 5 points. Just looking at Freebird here, Freebird was the only guy that took Cleveland. And man, did he have some points on Cleveland. He had 12 points on Cleveland.
Wow. Ooh.
Yeah. He would have probably at least been bumped up. I would probably say another 4 or 5 spots, if not more, if the Cleveland Browns could have just held on. Then Raider Nation, I don't see anything really that outlies with him. He did take Oakland, so he was, and he did have 10 points on Oakland, so he had faith in his team.
It's another brave pick.
Yeah. Now let's move on up. Okay, Hobo Samurai, which I found out is actually Teasley. Teasley had 66. Hobo Samurai, 66. Me coming in at, I don't even know what place this is, but I'm in 68 points. And then the Perfect Storm got 69 points. So here we are, and then we'll just kind of bump it up to White Dwayne of the Casual Heroes, which Dwayne Williams with 72 points there. So we're making our way up. Teasley had Kansas City with 13. Just looking at it, those picks were kind of split. I mean, there's a lot of people that took Pittsburgh, a lot of people took Kansas City, but he had 13 on Kansas City. Just looking at mine, I did not have a good week. Started out with me picking Baltimore.
At least you got to pick that game.
That's true. But listen, dude, I took 13 on the Jets. Boy, did I drink the Kool-Aid. Wow. I was all excited about Sam Darnold, and he's just going to just blow these Miami Dolphins away. And White Dwayne, he was smart, took Miami. He had big numbers on the Rams. White Dwayne's always, again, he's one of the smarter pickers of the group. Now, another guy that knows his stuff, totally 80s Pats. Yeah, you missed the first game, but you didn't suffer, man. You're sitting 6th.
Yeah, but you look at some of the hits I took this week. So I had 15 on New England at Jacksonville.
Oh, that's...
Jacksonville was playing without Leonard Fournette, who is absolutely their best offensive player.
Mm-hmm.
New England was coming off of a really strong Week 1 effort. They were finding an offensive rhythm that they were going to have to adjust to and should have found it. Jacksonville's defense is great, okay, but their offense has never shown you anything spectacular, including Week 1. However, in this game, the very ordinary Blake Bortles, who I still don't think much of, was helped tremendously by a certain fellow named Keelan Cole, who produced an amazing highlight reel one-handed catch, great touchdown, really had his way with the New England secondary all game.
That one-handed catch. That one-handed catch was unreal.
Yeah, and was on my bench in all 3 of my fantasy leagues. So that game hit me pretty hard.
Yeah.
You look at next one, my 14-point game. I had Washington over Indianapolis.
I don't think that was a bad call, in my opinion, considering I had 12 on them.
Well, if you look at the analytics from Yahoo, 91% of pickers picked the Redskins to beat the Colts.
Oh, my gosh.
So that's a pretty significant number.
Yeah, it is. Jeez.
Yeah, and so 91% of us were wrong. And my last double-digit no-points effort was I picked Houston over Tennessee.
I think that was a solid pick as well. I don't know where we went wrong there, but I watched a little bit of, let's just say I was watching the updates from the game, and I think Houston was weren't they getting like beat pretty soundly at the beginning, and then they started to mount a comeback, if I remember correctly. But Tennessee ends up winning 20-17, and I think Houston was trying their best, and I was like, oh, okay, well, hey, we might have a chance here. But yeah, they ended up losing, so I can't fault you for that. I mean,
and I guess most people can't, because 83% of us picked Houston versus only 17 for Tennessee. But the problem is I weighted heavy on all those games, and unfortunately that came back to bite me.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Of those 3 teams, New England, Washington, and Houston, who would you put the least amount on come next week?
I believe New England is... I think they have a pretty tough... I think they're against Detroit.
Oh, jeez. Well, okay. Wipe that off the board because Detroit stinks this year.
Yeah, and then we've got, who were my other heavy-weighted picks there that didn't turn out? Washington. Washington is playing Green Bay.
Yeah, it's at Washington.
And Houston is playing the Giants.
Yep.
I would probably put most of my weight on Houston.
I'm probably right there with you because the Giants and Eli Manning are having a rough start. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, yeah, they tied last week, but you never count Aaron Rodgers out.
And against arguably the league's best defense and a very good offense finally supporting that defense too.
All right, let's move on up here. We have a tie for what is, I think, 4th and 5th. That's 78 points between Wilvis and Steel Curtain. Now, Steel Curtain, I think she has won the last 2 years.
I got screwed last year. I'd just like to point that out.
So seeing Steel Curtain and Wilvis tie for the week, hey, it doesn't surprise me one bit. Looks like Wilvis went with Kansas City over Pittsburgh. That was a smart pick. Looks like Steel Curtain had just about the same picks as everybody else. What I would imagine really hurt them. They're obviously a big Steelers fan, and they put 3 on Pittsburgh. So that I took Pittsburgh as well, so I can't fault them. All right, moving up. We got another person who made 3rd place this week. That's Mamaw Cat, who has 81 points. One of the only ones that took Tampa Bay, and she had 11 points on Tampa Bay. Is she a believer?
That is bold.
That is very bold.
That is somebody who has firmly put themselves into believing in Fitzmagic.
That's right. And one of 2 people that took Indianapolis. Granted, it was only 1 point, but it's still 1 point that she didn't lose over Washington. So, the other person that took Indianapolis was Freebird, and they only had 2 on them. So, smart picks. So, here we go. NFL Super Pro, who was, I believe, the winner last week. He comes in at 2nd place with 85 points. And then we have Go Luck Yourself. Now, I was at a loss as to who this was last week. Did a little bit of research. A lady joined us there a couple weeks before the Pick'em started. She probably said that she would be glad to join the Pick'em, and she looks forward to whipping me. Go Luck Yourself, big Steelers fan too, which maybe she's an Andrew Luck fan as well. But she did it this week. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, she had 93 points, came in 1st place for the week. She had also one of the biggest improvements from week 1 to week 2. She was in 9th place last week, and now she sits in 2nd overall with 169 points. So
overall standings.
Just a real quick rundown from 15. We'll go 16 to 1 here in the overall. 16 sits Big Ben 07 with a big fat 0 points. Ronnie sits at 15th with 68. Here we go to the core players. Freebird sitting at 14th. He's sitting at 14th with 115. Raider Nation 119 at 13th spot. 12th spot sits Hobo Samurai with 124 points. Sawin with 134 points and sitting at 11th. Then we got 10th with Thug and Harmony, 1 point above Sawin with 135. The Perfect Storm, 144, sitting at 9th place. And then Mamaw Cat, who if she keeps picking like she has, which I've seen her do very well in the past, 152 points in that 8th spot. And Totally 80s Pat, 158 points sitting in 7th. You are 1 point, sir. 1 point behind me in 6th. Wow. Actually, man, look at this. Then we have 1 more point between 6th and 5th. So Steel Curtain in 5th place, 160 points. And then we got White Dwayne Williams, 164 points in 4th place. Wilvis, 167 points sitting in 3rd. Then 169, like I said, the best improver of the week. Go Luck Yourself. And then NFL Super Pro holding on with a 10-point lead in 1st place. So there you go. There's your overall rundown.
You gotta love that, from 8 to 1, a difference of, 2 to 3 weighted games can change everything.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah, dude. Me, you, Steel Curtain, and White Dwayne, all within 6 points of each other, I believe. So it's and actually 9 points from you're 9 points from 3rd, just like that, Pat Mullen, just like that. Now, I think, like I said, I went through the stats. I saw the Rams were pretty much the lock pick of the week. Everybody took the Rams. The Rams defeated Arizona soundly, where Arizona didn't even get points on the board. And I heard a stat today that they didn't even cross the 50 until, like, the 4th quarter. So the Arizona Cardinals are not doing so hot. And then the big split game, I think, of the week goes to Chicago-Seattle. So the Chicago-Seattle game was I think there was 8 people that took Chicago, 7 or 8 people that took Chicago, and the rest of them took Seattle. 42 points total on Chicago, and Seattle had a total of 36 points. So was it
the percentages breakdown from Yahoo was 74% of users, myself included, took the Bears to 26 for Seattle. We had a 60-40 game, believe it or not, and that was Dallas and the Giants. 60% of users took Dallas, 40% took the Giants.
How did we stack up versus that? 1, 2, 3, 4 people took Dallas, and those 4 people were rights. Dallas was able to handle the Giants pretty easily.
See, I picked the hard stuff, and I just don't weight it right.
We have talked this roundup into the ground. Is there anything else?
The NFL overtime rule is atrocious. I just want to have that pointed out. And I'm going to give y'all my pick of the week.
Ooh, right.
This week, that's going to be the Minnesota Vikings over the Buffalo Bills.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to give you my upset pick of the week.
Oh, I look forward to this.
So this week, your upset pick of the week is going to be the Denver Broncos over the Baltimore Ravens.
Oh, my. Now, are they playing they're playing at Baltimore. Denver at Baltimore, and you're saying Denver's going to take it to the Ravens and walk out of there with a W.
I absolutely am.
Bold predictions by one totally 80s Pat. Man, I can't thank you enough for coming on here, and I look forward to having you back on here sometime soon or anytime soon, man. If you're ever up for it, you just let me know. I will have you right back on here. You want to plug anything before we leave?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity, Jess. So I just recorded a live commentary with Mark Radulich, the patriarch of the Radulich Broadcasting Network. It's a TV party extra live commentary of this past weekend's Gennady Golovkin, Canelo Alvarez middleweight title fight. If you follow sports at all, I'm sure you heard plenty of controversy behind that one. You can actually listen to the live broadcast that myself and Mark did during the fight. And since the fight is now widely available, I'm not going to tell you where, but you can watch it. You can actually sync it up with our live commentary. It's really cool. You can do it. We appreciate any and all feedback. Casual Heroes are back, ladies and gentlemen. You can listen to the first WrestleCast with myself, Jed, and Chris that was recorded. It is up on YouTube. The Casual Heroes do have a YouTube page now. You can go ahead and check us out on there. We have a couple more shows we'll be recording in the coming weeks that we're going to release and edit. Chris is dealing with a little bit of a medical issue, so we wish him a speedy recovery. But be on the lookout. We're going to have Worst Year Ever, and it's going to be a debate between 1993, 1994, and 1995.
All right. Very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. I think we're going to be putting this one and week 1 on the network. I thought about keeping it off of there, but I think we're going to put both of them on there because, believe it or not, you may not be part of the Pick'em, but you may enjoy some NFL news, and by golly, we'll bring it to you. Give that a like. Stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. We're on Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, right at home on Spreaker.com, and we're also on Spotify. So you can pretty much find us anywhere so long as you type in RADULICH in the search box. Rate, subscribe, do all that great stuff. All right, now for the official closing, I'm Jesse Starcher. That's Pat Mullen. We're out of here. Have a good one. We'll be talking to you next week. Bye-bye.